The new animated DC film, Batman Gotham By Gaslight, is a film made by Timm and directed by Sam Liu, two of DC Animation's greatest filmmakers. The film itself is based on the Elseworld story comic book, Gotham By Gaslight, and its sequel, Master of the Future. Though the film focuses mainly on the first comic book, which is basically Batman vs Jack the Ripper. The second comic book only has some elements from it incorporated into the film, and doesn't really come into play for the most part. Now, as I said, Timm and Sam Liu are two of DC Animation's best filmmakers, but their recent film, Batman the Killing Joke, was rather disappointing, and Batman and Harley Quinn was just dreadful. So going into this film, my expectations were quite low, but I'm pleased to say that this film is actually pretty good, and an excellent adaptation. The identity of Jack the Ripper has been changed from the person it was in the comics, which is no surprise, as it wouldn't be a very good mystery if they didn't change it, especially since it is glaringly obvious in the comic who the murderer is. And in the film it is quite a twist that you definitely won't see coming, and don't worry, I'm not going to reveal it in this video. Now, the first thing about this film that surprised me was how mature it is in its content. Not too graphic and no real swearing, but the theme of Victorian prostitution comes in quite early, which does make sense since this is Jack the Ripper we're talking about. Though I thought the Jack the Ripper themes would be dealt with more subtlety than they use. However, with that being said, they don't show too much. Enough is said and enough is stated by the characters that we know where the scene is going, but we don't see or hear too much. And the same is true of Jack the Ripper's victims. We see enough of the violence to know what's happening, but we don't see too much of the gore, so it enhances the film's scene rather than making it all about the gore, which, let's be honest, wouldn't have been very entertaining, and we'd have all known that the filmmakers were just doing it to get attention. But thankfully, the filmmakers avoided it on this film. But the film is still rated R instead of PG-13, so it makes sense that they can show exactly what they want to show. But as I say, they still don't go too far with the R rating, just using mature themes and violence where it's needed to tell the story. But to be fair to the filmmakers, how could they have done the story of one of history's most famous serial killers without showing at least some gore and violence? They couldn't, or at least they couldn't have done a very good film without showing this. The plot of the film is quite simple. It is basically just Batman hunting down Jack the Ripper in Victorian London, or I should say Victorian Gotham. But it's engaging and well paced, and I didn't find myself bored while watching the film, and my mind never really drifted, whereas with the DC films of late, my mind has been drifting all over the place while watching them. I wouldn't say that it's a great mystery of who the Jack is, as in the audience working out who Jack is, as the clues are very small and you won't put it together till Batman does at the end. Though on the second viewing you will be able to connect the dots that are there, though they are very few. The plot changes quite a bit from the comic. The most glaring difference is that the film features a host of DC characters, such as Catwoman and Hugo Strange, who were never in the comic book. The filmmakers clearly added these extra characters to cement the feeling of being in a DC universe and being in Gotham City. That, and of course it's fun to see alternative versions of the characters that we're already very familiar with. But it doesn't distract from the story, and I would say that actually enhances it. Most of the scenes and dialogue have been changed from the comic as well, so if you were looking for an exact copy, then you'll be disappointed, as this film tells very much a different story that just has some of the same broader plot points. But it's still an enjoyable film, and any changes that have been made feel organic and not forced, at least in my opinion. And to be fair to the filmmakers, the original comic wasn't really long enough to make a film of this length without at least a few changes. But for the whole, the changes they do make work very well, and I very much enjoy watching this film. The only real complaint I have is the ending of the film. I won't give it away, but the film just sort of ends, and it feels like there are still a few points that needed to be wrapped up in a final scene or two. In fact, when I was watching it, I expected them to cut to another scene, but instead the movie just ends with things unresolved as to where the characters are going next. And it just feels as if the movie isn't quite finished, and it's a rather large flaw with what is an otherwise well-made film. The voice acting is brilliant. Bruce Greenwood is reprising his role of Batman, having played him in Young Justice TV show and Batman Under the Red Hood, and he does a great job as usual, and gives us all something to watch while we wait to hear his voice in the third season of Young Justice. Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, is voiced by Jennifer Carpenter, which surprised me as I didn't recognise her voice at all, but she performs as well as Greenwood and has a wonderful singing voice. Anthony Stewart Head, or Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as I remember him, features as the voice of Alfred Pennyworth, and I think he actually might be the best Alfred Pennyworth that I've ever heard, and I hope he reprises this role in the future, as I think he manages to capture that over-the-top British poshness as no other Alfred has done before. The soundtrack matches the era perfectly, yet still manages to set the right ambience, and all around the film is well made and has a decent script. I have said before that it's hard to imagine how filmmakers could possibly cock up the story of Batman vs Jack the Ripper, but after the Batman and Harley Quinn film, I had my misgivings. But I'm pleased to say that this film doesn't disappoint, and I thoroughly recommend watching it. If you have already watched it, then please let us know what you thought of the film in the comments. And I'd just like to say a quick thank you to those who made this video possible by donating to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. Patreon is a crowdfunding site that is helping us to bring you more videos each week and to raise funds for adapting comic book stories into short animated films. If you're interested in donating or just want to find out more, a link is in this video's description. And as always, thanks for watching and feel free to subscribe, share, like and comment.